Hey everybody, welcome to Time for Tea. I'm coming at you today a little disheveled. Went for a hike this morning. It was very refreshing and lovely. Saw waterfalls and we were in nature and listened to birdsong, and it was exactly what I needed. It's been a crazy week for the world, and it's nice sometimes just to go back to nature and be there and feel and be and experience. And anyway. So forgive the dishevelment, but I want to make sure that I posted this video on time today because I have a couple other things going on this afternoon, but I want to stick to my 3 o'clock on Sundays. So today we're going to talk about the second set of chapters from Sweet Divinity. We're going to finish Sweet Divinity for next week, and then we'll start reading Beloved by Toni Morrison. And I'll share a poem at the end, as usual, and today I've chosen a poem by Maya Angelou that I think applies really beautifully to where we are right now as a country. But first, I always start with some kind of little fun fact about myself. And today, I guess an interesting fact anyway, perhaps about me, is that I am super duper into yoga and mindfulness and being present in the moment. It's something that I was very good at for a long time, and then I kind of lost my way just in the busyness of life. And during this quarantine, I've been able to come back to it. A lot of that has been inspired by one of my former students, Katie McCormick. I follow her on social media, and she's been posting her journey. Oh, thank you, Jack. And so she's really inspired me to get back to this way of living. So for the last week, I've been eating clean and eating mostly vegetarian, not all, but I think I've had 2 meals that weren't vegetarian, and but eating lots of vegetables and other proteins. And then I've been doing yoga every day and trying to go for a walk or doing something also cardio for my body each day. But on those walks, I'm also listen to podcasts or audiobooks that I'm also working on my mind. So I finished a podcast recently called Murder, Etc., which was phenomenal. And it's set here where I live in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's about a wrongfully convicted man who was wrongfully convicted of murder in the 70s and went to death row, but had a reprieve there. And so now the person doing the podcast is trying to prove his innocence. All right, go. But what's interesting about that podcast is that it's unraveling now in real time. There was something in the news yesterday about this case, and so that's kind of fun. It's really, I'm learning so much about where I live that I would never have known. And then I also listened to, Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness. And so I've been listening to that a lot lately. There's some really great episodes of that one that have to do with racism and equality that I would recommend to anyone. Warning, there's explicit language, and Jonathan's a lot. He's extra and loves it, and so he's not for everybody. But the episodes that are available about race are really, I think, poignant and important. Oh, thank you. Jack brought me my drink. It's not my birthday, but we do have a balloon, and it's true. Oh, not all heroes wear capes. We bought that for Jack's graduation parade from preschool. So anyway, I'm trying to be more mindful. I'm doing my yoga every day, and I'm really working on just a full self detox and cleanse and reboot. So if you're interested in anything like that, I'd suggest you check out my girl, Katie McCormick. I do use Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. And I also have a book called Yogalosity by Mandy Ingber, and those sources have been really helpful to me in this time. Also, I read a lot about Buddhism. And there's a great book called Living Buddha, Living Christ, which makes parallels between Christianity and Buddhism. So if you're Christian and I just said that about Buddhism, and you're like, then that book I think will really open up some things for you, because it shows sort of similarities between the two and ways that tenets of Buddhism can be applicable in enhancing your Christian life. So anyway, I love world religions and philosophies. Okay, so that's enough. All right, so Sweet Divinity. For this week, we read chapters 6 through 10. And then for next week, I think we're just going to finish this puppy up. It's a, oh gosh, I had you read a big old chunk. I don't think I realized how long some of my chapters were. Sorry about that, guys. Or maybe not sorry. Hopefully it read pretty quickly and fluidly. So let's finish up the book for next week so we can really get going on the Toni Morrison. I think that's really timely, and it's time. And as much as I love talking about my book, and I'm sure I'll talk about it more on here as we go along, I'm excited, really excited to get to Toni Morrison too. But today I just wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the moments in this section and where the inspiration came from and how they were crafted and all that good stuff. So I guess I would just start by saying that as somebody who grew up in the country, the idea of kissing the boy in a hayloft or in the back of a pickup truck is this cliche that's very true. And so, but I also knew I really wanted that to be one of Amanda Jane's things. Like I thought this could be really funny, but also connect or go to that theme of reconnecting with your roots and where you come from, and also show a little bit of the transition that's going on within her with the hayloft. And so I put that in there. And I also put that in shortly after the conversation that Amanda Jane has with her mom, and then she talks with her daughter as well about the okay, I'll leave it by me, thank you, about her marriage dissolving. And I did want to be clear that her marriage was on the outs before I really introduced the romantic aspect of her relationship with Jesse, for a lot of reasons, but I wanted that for her because I know that Amanda Jane is very concerned with Sylvie and the effect that this has on her, and she wouldn't do anything untoward that way. Also, because I was trying not to be too controversial, but anyhow, so okay, so a couple moments I wanted to kind of read and go through with you. When Amanda Jane returns home, this is the end of chapter 6, and she like sneaks into the house, and and her mother's there in the doorway of her bedroom. Why, you're mighty late, Amanda Jane. Why did I feel like a 16-year-old sneaking in after curfew? Sorry, Mom. No apologies. You're a grown woman now. I was just wondering if you've been caught in the storm. Yeah, we were actually. Kind of put a damper on the evening. She nodded. Well, good night, Mom. Turned for the stairs. Amanda Jane? Oh, Lord, what did she know? What did her maternal instincts tell her? I turned slowly, knowing full well there was a look of pure shame on my face, and yet I wouldn't take back this night for anything in the world. Yes, Mom? She was smiling outright now. Why is there hay stuck all in your hair? My face caught on fire, really. It was on fire. And then it was as if I were vomiting words. Well, when it rained, we had to run. And we ran to the barn, and we were there for a while. So she held her hand. I don't need to know anymore. Mom, it's not like, God, this was so awkward. Well, that's reassuring. I like to think you're still pure, even if there is a sweet little babe upstairs. Now go check on your daughter. And then she says, good night, Amanda Jane. You might want to brush your hair out before you get into bed. Shame, 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 shame. How do parents have the everlasting ability to shame you no matter how old you get? And I was hoping that would be a relatable point to a lot of people, this idea, that we grow up and we become adults and make our own decisions. We live our lives, for the most part, apart from our families. And yet somehow, like those, the childhood rules and regulations and expectations are still in there. And shame, shame, shame. Like I've been caught And I mean, she's a grown woman, like her mom says, but some bits of that relationship don't ever really go away. And I think that's one of them for a lot of people. Anyway, so a couple other little moments I wanted to point out. One is when she talks about the flashback of the winter formal, and oh my goodness. Okay, this is basically a true story of me making mistakes in high school. But the best part is that there really is total truth to the fact that my friend Ashley and I, when we did not go to the winter formal in high school, we absolutely dressed up in our sequin dresses and we drove across state lines because in my hometown there was nowhere to eat back then. Eventually, we ended up getting a Red Lobster in my hometown, but you had to drive across state lines to go to Red Lobster before that. So we actually went to the Olive Garden, which was like a big deal, huge romantic thing. And so we put on our dresses and we drove there and we had a dinner date, just the two of us in our pretty dresses we had bought for this dance. And then we came back to my house and we dyed my hair and it went really badly and turned bright orange. That was how we spent the night of the winter formal. It's called the Sweetheart Dance. Good times. So that is absolutely a true story. And the bit about us sitting there blasting Coolio is also based on life. My friend Ashley and I would drive her home from school and we had a mixtape. And Gangsta's Paradise was really big back then. And that was our favorite song on the mixtape. And we would just blast it. And we knew all the words. But it's also a mix with one of my friends from high school named Matt. And he and I would go cruising around downtown in this, I don't know who that old Cadillac belonged to. It wasn't old, but it was like a big car. And Matt, who was shorter than me, would put the seat all the way back and we'd crank down the windows and just blast music and we just drive around thinking we were like the stuff. And now that I'm a grown adult, I look at kids doing this and I'm like, that's embarrassing. So yeah, so I decided to memorialize it for all time. Clearly, I have no shame about these things. Okay, but anyway, so there's some of that. There's a discussion of religion in here too, which I think is really important, and I wanted to incorporate that because in the South, religion is it's a huge part of life, and it's part of the culture in a lot of areas in the South, particularly where I grew up. And so I wanted to address religion. As for myself, like I'm really interested in religion. I'm really interested in different denominations of Christianity. I'm super interested in Islam and Hinduism, Buddhism. And so I love to learn and understand and see what similarities there are amongst these different faiths and philosophies too, Buddhism. So, but in the South where I grew up, religion it's part of the culture. It's part of everyday life. You meet somebody and, what church do you go to? Like that's a question that's asked along with, how old you are, where you graduated high school. And I struggled a lot with that growing up. I went to a huge church in my hometown. And yet, I struggled with a lot of things there. My mom was not allowed to teach Sunday school because she was divorced. I was harassed in Sunday school by a kid I went to school with, and some other unfortunate things happened in that church building between him and me that were not consented to. And so that really, all those experiences really, they had a profound impact on me in terms of how I thought about religion and organized religion in church. And eventually I went a few times to a different denomination in my hometown. I really liked that. But it wasn't until I went to college that I really started thinking about church again, because where I grew up, it was so much a part of so much of the community that when I begged my family to leave that church, and we did because I didn't want to endure anything else in there, then, you're kind of disconnected. So, it's, we would go to the country fair, and all the different churches have tents with all their baked goods, which are so good. And, you know, the Christmas parade, all the churches would have floats in the Christmas parade. So really, it was like, it's such an essential part of life in our community. And so I wanted to address that in here too. And certainly a large population where I grew up are very evangelical, you know, so the whole, do you accept Jesus Christ, your personal Lord and Savior, you know, how, all that. And that can put a lot of pressure on people. And so I wanted to capture that here, not in any way that's disrespectful, because I'm, you know, to each their own, and I, great. But just from the other side, like sort of how striking that can be for you. So I did want to put a little bit of religion in there, and the mom, Mama, she watches her church on TV. And when I was growing up, when we stopped going to that church, my grandmother would always say that we didn't have to go to a church because we could pray just as well out in nature that God created. And so we didn't go to church for, gosh, pretty much all of my high school years. And but that didn't mean that we didn't talk about God or religion or faith, and we absolutely did. And you know, in our house we prayed together, and my grandmother read her Bible. Oh my gosh, like it's got so many tags in it, and it's underlined in comments, and she was very faith-filled. And even though she never really stepped foot in the church again after that, except for come to events for my family and my kids, their baptisms and stuff. But so I want to address that a little bit in there, but not in any kind of critical way. So I really hope it doesn't come across that way, but just to really capture what it is like to grow up in a place where that's such a huge part of life. So I also, you know, threw in a little bit about the cheerleader because it's a small town. Her whole situation with elementary school is a very small town experience. So anyway, yes. Okay, well, let's see what else I wanted to say. Oh my gosh, the cupcake fight. This was one of my favorite scenes, and I didn't see it coming. I knew Richard was going to come, and I really worked hard not to make him a villain. I didn't want him to be this person that all readers hated, but more of just a flawed man, a flawed person. And so this throwdown in the cupcake shop was so much fun to write, because I played it all out in my head, and it was so funny. I'm like, this is just fantastic. And so yeah, the throwing the punches and the cupcakes, and then poor little Wendell Jones comes in and runs away. Like I couldn't have planned this scene. It really just happened. All right, he showed up in the cupcake shop, which I did not realize was going to happen. Of course, Jesse was there, and then, you know, chaos, but humorous chaos breaks out. I mean, I'm sure they lost a lot of money in baked goods that day, but hopefully it made for some funny. So anyway, I wanted, with the character of Richard, I really wanted, like I said, I didn't want him to be a villain. I want him to be a flawed person who, you know, isn't a horrible person. He's not evil, but he's also not right for Amanda Jane. She's not right for him. It's not a right relationship, and it's not a right relationship for Sylvie to have, to see as her parents and as a model for her. So that's what I wanted. So I worked actually really hard to make sure that Richard wasn't this evil guy, and that I could work through Amanda Jane's feelings with him. And I put in there, you know, that for a long time they hadn't been quite right. And so it wasn't like, you know, she thought everything was perfect and then it wasn't. It was a growing thing. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. And I grew up in a house with a divorced mother. And then I watched her in unhealthy relationships. And I feel really strongly that if you're in a relationship and it's unhealthy and then you need to go. So, so I wanted to address that here. And I wanted also to show, because I am someone who was not horribly, my experience with divorce in my family was very painful, but I've been through two, and when I was older, that was more painful. When I was younger, it wasn't painful. It was, but you know what I'm saying? Like it didn't scar me for life. And so I wanted Sylvie to have to work through that and go through all the feelings. Like when she's screaming, you know, that's stupid, that's not a family is together, a family loves each other, you're a big fat liar. Like I want her to be angry and to have all the feelings as well. And I wanted us to see her work through that in a way that I thought was age appropriate for her, but also to show that it's the right choice for Sylvie too, to have her parents separate, but happier and better because they're separate. So that's my view. And so I put that one in there. All right, so a couple other things. You know, the high school football game. So I guess I'll just go with this. So my hometown where I grew up, one of the things I love about it is that it's very much like Friday Night Lights. And so in my hometown on Friday nights, everyone goes to the football game. And my mom still goes to the football games on Friday nights, even though they don't know anyone who plays, because this is what you do. Like it's important. And so from the time I was in second grade, the cheerleaders from the high school would come to our elementary school on Fridays and sell us little ribbons with foil footballs on them that were printed like, you know, Raid the Raiders or whoever we were playing that week. And I bring my coins so I could buy them. And in second grade, my teacher, her husband was the head coach of the football team. And so we would they were rolling windows, crank them, that's a better word. We crank the windows down on Fridays. And then right before the bell rang, her clock was perfectly like in sync. Right before the bell rang, she would yell 1, 2, 3, and we'd all yell, "Go Big Red," because that was our hometown football team. And then you'd go to the football game and hang out with all your friends. And this is what you did on Friday nights in the fall. There were no other options. We had our homecoming parade, and it went straight through town. It was long. There were tons of floats in it, candy galore. And on at homecoming, and they still do this to this day because I've seen it. The cheerleaders would go and toilet paper all the houses of the senior football players and put signs in the front yard, and this is a huge deal. So our high school football coach, Coach Chappell, was like a hometown hero. We went to the state championship game my freshman year of high school. Like it is a big deal. And when I got to high school, I was in the marching band, and that was in so many ways, the marching band saved me in high school. I had a lot of struggles in high school, but I had a family, and so I wanted to capture that in here too. The whole, like, when she's like, go band, because if you were ever in the marching band, then you know the band is like a family. Like, you don't love everybody in your family, but it's a family. And so I wanted to capture that in here too. That was important to me. I mean, going to the football games, the hot dogs and everything else, and the stands pretty much clearing out when the band comes on, but there's a few people just cheering for the band. Like, in my mind, I can go back to Friday night and I can hear the warm up from the drummers in the band. Boom, 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 boom. I can hear the whole thing. I can remember marching up the hill to the stadium, and when those are the kinds of memories, you know, the kinds of memories that when you have them, they like give you that butterflies in your chest and your stomach, like, 'cause it's so good. Those are them for me. So so I had to capture that because it's a small town thing. And so you concluded where she decides that she's going to open the bakery, and she has her epiphany. And this is an important moment for her when she decides to do this. You know, she went and she got the job, and she was working for Beulah, but you know, the story is really about her getting her sense of herself back. And it's not enough to say she gets her independence. She's an independent woman, but it's really about her identity, like figuring out who she is and who she was. You know, you grow up and you're yourself, and then you get married, and oftentimes within the marriage, you know, people make adjustments, and your life path might adjust. Your original goals might change, which is fine. Absolutely. In life, there's so many choices we have to make about which direction to go. And I'm a firm believer that there can be more than one right path. I don't think that we have to try so hard to make sure we go on exactly the right path that's been planned for us. No, I think that we make choices, and there could be multiple good choices, right? If I had made a different choice to go to college somewhere else, I would never met my husband. I wouldn't have these kids. Like, I can't imagine it, but it doesn't mean I would have had an unhappy life. And so she is a woman in the position of having the chance to kind of pull it back to who she was before the marriage, but still carrying all that came with the marriage and all the growth and everything else. So to take all that, but to remember some things that she really loved or had goals, or that were a different path than the one that she took. And so when she decides to open the bakery, it's a big moment, because it shows that she has the self-assurance to look back and say, okay, so Amanda did all these things. What were some of the things that Amanda Jane wanted that were on a different path than the one she took? And it's not, oh, and I took this path so I never went for my dreams, right? No, I mean, I wanted to be a Broadway actress. I was positive this is what I was going to do. I was going to go to New York. I mean, I really was going for this. This was not some kind of pipe dream thing. I was working and planning, and I was going to go for it. Fell in love, got married. I live in the suburbs, and you know, I've had some crazy things happen with my career, but I don't take it back, and I don't see like my dream was thrown away or anything like that. Like, that's silly. I made the choice. I went down this path. I wanted it. If I had gone down that path, would I be happy? Probably. Yeah. But okay. So I don't know. It's just sort of my philosophy of things. So anyway, so we left off, let's see. I also really love when he starts calling her Mandy. I don't know, that makes me really happy. So yeah, so she's starting her bakery. You know, she's baking and she's delivering, and you start to get the sense, I hope, that the things are kind of leveling out for her. I didn't want the crux of this book to be the romance. I didn't want it to be, and then she found a new man and everything was wonderful. Jesse is wonderful, but he's wonderful because he affirms her as she is. He doesn't have expectations for her that are beyond who she is and what she wants to do and be. So he is a part of her journey to her own identity. But I did not want this to just be a romance novel with, you know, they kiss at the end and everything's great because I now have a man again, right? I'm really cognizant of the fact that I did not want to write a book where the moment that everything is right is when she has another man in her life, or like a relationship, a romantic relationship. I didn't want that. So I see their relationship as part of her journey, that she grows through her relationship with Jesse. She begins to see other parts of her that she had kind of put away, you know, the countrified parts, if you will, but it's deeper than that. And so, and he's with her in this whole idea to start the bakery. And I want her to have support outside of her family. So apart from just her mom or her daughter, that's what I wanted for her. So I would also just throw out the point where she comes home and says her mom's on the front porch and how something must be wrong because her mom never sits on the front porch and she's just furious because the kitchen's dirty. That's that's me growing up. My family was always on the back porch. And if somebody's standing on the front porch when you got home, somebody's mad. You're in trouble. So just, I don't drive a little more slowly to put off the inevitable. It's usually what I did. So anyway, so we left off there with the cupcake surprise and all of that. And I really love how this chapter ends. Crawling up the driveway at last, I noticed a red sports car peeking through the trees. As we pulled up in front of the house, I recognized the personalized tag, Glamour Girl. Suddenly, my anxiety lifted and I felt pure excitement. Jeanette Furman had arrived in Carroll, Georgia. Call the boys and tell them to get their boots on. Because here she comes. We couldn't leave Jeanette. Jeanette was such a fun character. I think I've mentioned this before, but when I first wrote her, she was, helping me out at the beginning to get everything going. And then as the book went on, I thought, yeah, we need her back. We need her back. We need some spunk. We need to bring this city. So here's Amanda Jane, like city girl coming back, but she still has a little country in her. And then she's becoming a little more countrified. And I'm like, it's been too long. Let's bring the city back in here. So I hope you'll enjoy the arrival of Jeanette and how the book plays out. I've got a really intriguing tale to tell about the ending of this book and some drama I experienced because of it. So we'll discuss that next week on the next episode of Time for Tea. In the meantime, if you have questions about the book, please just put a comment on this video and then I'll make sure that I address them because I want to make sure I'm talking about the things you want to hear. I think I talked a little bit about the process last time. This time I wanted to get a little more into the autobiographical elements of it and as I went along how the individual little sort of vignettes or stories were building toward the theme. So I hope that that was accomplished. So finish up for next time, and I'm going to leave you with a poem by Maya Angelou. So I would also say, just as an update, so last time I talked a lot about my hometown and where I come from and the complexity of racial issues there. And this week, there's been a lot in the news in my hometown, or not in my hometown, Chatsworth, but in Dalton. Because there's a Confederate statue that stands in the middle of downtown, and I believe his name's Joseph Johnston, and he was responsible for defending the city of Dalton against Sherman's troops during the Civil War. So, growing up, I would just hear, there would have been no Dalton without Johnston. And so now, with everything else that's going on in the world, there's a lot of conversation about taking the statue down and moving it. And it's been interesting to follow and to read. And, regardless of where you stand on the issue, I have been so pleasantly surprised at the number of people who have gone down to protest the statue. When I left home, it was 1998. It's a really long time ago. And so I remember it being the way that it was when I was there and the sentiments that were there and the things that I would hear and all of this. And it's remarkable to leave a place and then realize how much it grows and changes just as we all do as individuals. And so the evolution of it has been lovely to see. And I salute the fact that there's a dialogue going on. So there's been if you had told me in 1998, the one day there would be a Black Lives Matter march in my hometown, I would have told you were absolutely nuts. So, and that was never going to happen, and it has. So there's petitions on both sides, and I, for one, don't mind saying that I think that those monuments should be relocated. I think that there's probably a place for them so they can be used as learning tools, but I don't think that it's in any kind of place that's really celebratory. I don't think it's erasing history because history's happened. Like, we don't undo history, and no one's going to stop teaching about the Civil War. But we also have to remember that historically a lot of those statues were put up in response to integration as acts of intimidation. But one in my hometown, I don't think that's why it was put up. I don't really know the history of why, so I cannot speak to it. I will say that the Daughters of the Confederacy, who own the statue in my hometown, have put out a statement saying that they're happy to have it moved. If that's what the city council decides, that they're fine with that, because they would rather move it than to perpetuate conflict that could lead to injury for someone in my town. And that, I think that's great. That just made me think. All right, so I'm gonna read this poem by Maya Angelou. I hope that you are working toward, are doing what you can to educate yourselves and to help others be educated about these issues that are still going on in our country. We are one country, and we got to pull this thing together, and we need to do it now. So I will finish with this poem by Maya Angelou. It's from her book, I Shall Not Be Moved. Here she is. She's a queen. And the poem's called Equality. You declare you see me dimly through a glass which will not shine. Though I stand before you boldly, trim and rank and marking time, you do own to hear me faintly as a whisper out of rage, while my drums beat out the message and the rhythms never change. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. You announce my ways are wanton, that I fly from man to man, but if I'm just a shadow to you, could you ever understand? We have lived a painful history. We know the shameful past, but I keep on marching forward, and you keep on coming fast. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. Take the blinders from your vision, take the padding from your ears, and confess you've heard me crying, and admit you've seen my tears. Hear the tempo so compelling, hear the blood throb in my veins. Yes, my drums are beating nightly, and the rhythms never change. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. So I'm just going to say this straightforwardly. I think that because of the history of these monuments and what they mean to people, to such an important, rich, beautiful segment of our population as a country, everyone should be made to feel welcome when they drive through a town. And, you know, obviously, and I know the slippery slope arguments, right? Oh, let's take down this and take down that. But we're talking about, for example, the statue of General Forrest. He was the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. There should not be a statue to him. There should not. Take it down. Take it down. All right, I'm getting off my pedestal now. And I'm not trying, also not, I'm gonna go now. All right, so I'll finish Sweet Divinity for next week, and then we'll start reading Beloved by Toni Morrison. Thanks for joining me for Time for Tea, and I'll see you soon. Keep reading. Words matter.